started to write poems and I started to write stories because I really wanted to see my experience of growing up reflected in a book. And I would go to the library and I would look for books about girls like me, about young people like me. And I didn't really find a book ever about a Black girl who was adopted into a white family. So writing at first was a way to like get my feelings out, to deal with the complicated feelings I had about both being part of my family that I loved so much and also being kind of sad about being separated from another family. And also some of the things I was dealing with based on being a Black girl growing up. Poetry is sort of my like creative home, but I like to write all different types of things. And if you've read For Black Girls Like Me, it has poems in it, it has pieces that look like short stories, it has letters, it has songs, it has definitions, probably has some other stuff that I'm forgetting that I did in that book. But it's kind of like a mashup of a lot of different styles. The most important thing is that you're finding ways to tell the stories that you need to tell and connect with other people. Sometimes I sit down and I think what I want to write is a poem, but for whatever reason, it's not working. Like I can't get the thoughts out, I can't get the images out. And so I found that like, well, maybe if I just try it in a different way, like maybe if I just try to write this like as a short scene from a story, then it will come out. And so I think it just depends when you sit down, and if you're feeling resistance or it's like hard for you, maybe try it a different way. Maybe even if you don't consider yourself like a visual artist, like, and all you can draw is stick figures, which would, hey, be me, but maybe try to draw your story instead of write it out first and see what that looks like and see what comes up. The question that people always ask is like, are you someone who likes to plan out your story all the way, like do a full outline, or are you someone that just like has a character and starts writing and sees what's happened? And I would sort of say both. I like to sometimes think of the character and then think of like the story arc, like where does this story start? What is the big thing that is working up to sort of the climax of the story? But the wonderful thing about writing is sometimes you have a plan and you start to write, and then all of a sudden your character is like, actually, I think I want to be a trapeze artist or whatever it is. And then you sort of, and if that's really inspiring and really fun for you and it makes sense for the character, you follow sort of what that might look like. And so I would say I have a plan, but I never feel like I have to stick to it if something else is happening. The work of being a writer is not always sitting down at your computer, or if you write in a notebook and writing. That the work of being a writer is also to like live and engage with other stories in the world, because that's going to give you an example of the type of things that you might want to write, or the different ways that other people are telling stories. When I am in a moment where I feel like I have writer's block, even though I don't really believe in writer's block, I have to remind myself, you know what, maybe the work today isn't sitting down and writing 1,000 words. Maybe the work today is you go and you read that other middle grade book that's written in verse that you are really excited about and is doing really interesting things, so that you can be like, oh, look what this book is doing. You have to read stories, all types of stories, to be a better writer, and to work on your craft if you want to be a writer. I struggle with first drafts of things because I want to write something that is perfect and gets everything right away, and that's just not realistic. No matter how talented you are, no matter how many books you do or do not have published, or stories that you have out in the world, you have to practice it and you have to revise. Sometimes you just need to get the words out on the page, and then know that you have the time to clean it up, to puzzle it together. And I think that stems from the fear of like, well, what if I write something and it's not good enough, or people hate it, or people don't understand it, right? Because when you put a story out into the world and someone reads it, you don't really have control anymore of like how people interpret it. So you have to trust that you've done your best and then let the story go.